Hello, good morning. Here we are live. I love our intro every time. We could do this for 20 years, and I'm like, no, we have to stick with the same intro.
Yes. Hello, guys. Hi, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm
Yeah,
amazing. It's Friday.
it
It's like
is
the beginning
Friday.
of the weekend.
It is Friday. I forgot that it was Friday, and I was walking down the hall, and saw somebody like, oh, hi, how are you? She's like, great, it's Friday, and I was like, oh yeah, it's Friday. Friday's like a thing, People love their Fridays.
Of course, it is. It's like the end of the week. Like you get 2 days off work. Well, if you have the full weekend. And do you have anything planned for the weekend? Like anything exciting?
Yeah, I'm actually working, so I'm teaching Empower Thyself this weekend.
Oh, wow, amazing.
It'll
I
be
wish
the
I could be
first,
there and do it again.
yeah, it'll be the first Empower Thyself in Oakville.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That must be
that
exciting.
is exciting. That is very exciting.
Well,
Bringing
I
the
hope it
light
goes
to a
well.
new city.
Exactly. So yeah, what we're talking today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I well, first of all, we should update everybody. If you haven't been watching the past few weeks, we have been covering this book talking about the five wounds of the soul, and each week we talk about one of the wounds and share about what the wound is, the mask, and some themes in the book. And yeah, I've been noticing that when we have these conversations, I'm thinking about it before the conversation, and then we have our dialogue, and then after the conversation, when I'm like, just kind of contemplating or digesting everything, I start to like more gets revealed to me. Have you been noticing that for yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm like, I start the conversation of, oh, I think I have this, but I don't know the extent of it. And only after our conversations, I'm like, I keep getting the downloads as well. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, and we did the five languages of love in the last series of talking, and I feel like I've talked about the five languages of love. I've dissected that. I've contemplated it. I talk about it a lot with clients and sessions, or that sort of thing. But this one was completely new to me, and it, like talking about the flip side, essentially distortions that can occur through your experiences, specifically as a child, and how it creates certain behaviors and patterns for the rest of your life until you're willing to name it, identify it, and bring healing to it. You know, um, and healing is an interesting thing because, like, I think that's a conversation that comes up a lot for me. Is like what is healing? I do energy healing, and I use ancient modalities for that. But there's so many layers to healing, so many layers. And to think of these as wounds that need your attention and healing, I think is important because, like, if I had an open wound in my skin and I was just walking around with that, that wouldn't be okay. Like people are like, you need to bandage that, you need to stitch that, or whatever it is. But like when we have these emotional wounds that we don't see, um, it's the same thing. We're just walking around with this, thing that's um, destructive, uncomfortable, damaging to our relationships. And I'm really happy that we're having this conversation. Did you want to share this week's?
Yes, just adding to what you were
Yeah,
saying, I love that analogy on the physical wound. And also, people would stare at it and make comments about it as well, of course. But it also, if it's open, right, you can actually like be contagious to other people. You can infect other people, right? And that happens exactly the same thing with wounds of your soul. That unconsciously, you might think that you have it contained, or you might not even know that it's there, but it's impacting other people's lives, and typically it impacts the ones that you most love, and you don't want that for the people you love. So it's always good to understand that about yourself, so that you can actually reach fulfillment and allow yourself to be yourself, you know. That's by putting a band-aid, taking care of the infection, understanding what occurred, and try to put techniques and tools in place to for that not to happen again, you know, monitor. So I love that. Thank you. This week's, so we've talked about rejection, we've talked about abandonment, and this week we are presented by Lisa Bourbet, wound that is humiliation, the wound of humiliation. And this is typically a child that has suffered this in their childhood, right? And it's when they encounter several situations where they feel down, they feel like someone is lowering themselves, and it's made out of shame, so they're not okay with this. And in order to their ego, in order to avoid this pain, they will wear. We typically assign a mask to the wound, so they will wear a mask of. They become masochists, so someone that will inflict pain on themselves, um, so that they avoid the pain of humiliation. They have the control of that pain, and they don't allow other people to inflict that pain on themselves. So they are the first ones to actually do that. Um, it's quite interesting because typically, as Liz says on her book, typically this comes from the mother, the parent, the caregiver, the mother, or the caregiver that has the most feminine energy, as I would put it. And the greatest need and the greatest fear at the same time is freedom, because they are so like control freaks, because they control their own pain and the extent to what they allow the pain to be. They also get tired of it, so they want freedom. They want not to be able to do that and not to depend on people as well. Typically, the masochist will try to be caregiver as well to other people. They will find situations where they will take care of people and put themselves in situations that they actually might fail, and they know that, so that they can feel the humiliation, you know. And that's the masochist part of it. In summary, that's what the author talks about. Of course, there are a lot of layers here, and I'm so excited to discuss these with you. But in hindsight, that's what she says. She also talks about the physical level of it. I'm not too. I don't fully agree on that term, because it's a generalization, and I am sure that she has the whole study on it. But she says that people that have suffered the wound of soul, they have the wound of soul of humiliation, and they have the mask of masochism. They typically are corpulent bodies. You know, they are big, somewhat distorted somehow, but they build up all of this energy on their body, that the body becomes big, you know. But it's not like fat is fat in terms of the body is not just fat. It does have muscle, so that they can sustain the pain and sustain the humiliation itself. So that's a summary of what she's saying. Do you have any?
You know, one of the things I thought about, I wanted to talk to you around is, and it's a theme that comes up with a lot of people where they, self-sabotage, and they put themselves in a situation and then they kibosh it, or they put themselves in a situation that, um, perhaps they don't, let's say they want to get something or do something, and then they fail, and then it contributes to the story that they have of themselves. See, this is why, or, that sort of thing. or something's going good, something's going good, something's going good, and then they kibosh themselves so that they don't have to perhaps experience when it doesn't go good. So it's like a subconscious way to stay in control. And I think a lot of people recognize that they self-sabotage, but they would never necessarily relate it to humiliation, or they would never relate it to these sorts of deeper aspects that you just talked about that this book really highlights. And this is what I mean by, I'm thinking about it before we talk, I'm listening to you and you talk, and then later I think about it. It's like there's so many layers to these pieces. And I often think about the five languages of love. Often people will be like, oh, this is mine. Like physical touch is like, that's me. But I've always thought, why is it just one? Like, why can't we embody all of them and master all of these languages of love? And now on the flip side, as we work with the shadow, I'm thinking like, oh, like, is it just one, or do we have like the aspects of all of these within us that need to be cleaned up, and that this author so elegantly has named for us and brought forth examples for us to consider. And even when you talk about it, like what was it last week? I think it was last week when we talked about humiliate, or not rejection. Whenever we talked about rejection, I was thinking like, oh, I don't really, I can't really relate. But then the more I thought about it, the more I started to see how it's laced in things, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like maybe it's more there than I realized. And like with the humiliation, I'm like, oh, I don't really relate. But now I'm like, but is this one laced too? Like where there's aspects in there, like, um, we don't realize that these patterns, these behaviors are developed very, very early on, like within the first 7 years of your life. And they're developed from the experience of a child, and you grow up as an adult, but you're still operating from that like that child consciousness. Not necessarily all the time, but there are times, and I think specifically in relationships, when these things come out. So I love what you said around how it's not just about you, it's about how this actually impacts your relationships. This impacts the person you decide to partner with. It will impact your parenting. It will impact your kids in the next generation. And you can actually pass on this lace of shit, so to speak, through to the next generation, unless you're willing to step up and clean it up and create a whole new experience for yourself, for your family, for your parenting, for your loved ones, for your partnership, for your friendships even, and just how you even show up in the world through work. Because nobody talks about this, but when you're working with people every day and you're getting to know those people, there's a sense of intimacy there. And these patterns show up in the workplace too, where things don't go the way people want them to go, and like all of a sudden they just turn into like a child, or like, their favorite mug isn't in the cupboard, and like, or like just weird stuff that will bring out wonky patterns in people, even in the workplace. So it does impact people, and you don't realize the power that you have in the circles that you're in. So looking at these aspects, these shadows, I think is so valuable. But humiliation is an interesting one. And what's the flip side of that? Like, maybe this is why there's such a major issue with people having a fear to fail, because they feel shamed about it, or humiliated, or bad about it in some way, when really, there really is no such thing as failure. It's about learning. But where down the line were you made to feel bad about something? And that doesn't mean somebody would deliberately wanted to make you feel bad about it. This isn't like an opportunity to harp on your parents and how they were with you, your caregivers. And in this case, the mother was highlighted. It's like, it's not about being, oh, your mother ruined you. It's not that. It's not like that. Your parents don't wake up thinking, how can I ruin my kid today? It's like they're just human beings trying to navigate the human being experience. And yes, they're going to drop the ball, because that's just how this experience goes. But your parents dropping the ball at some point when you're younger doesn't mean it's okay for you to drop the ball every day of your life by continuing these patterns and these behaviors. So I think it's really fascinating. I think this one in particular is related to major themes that people do experience or can name, like self-sabotaging. or fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, perfectionism, even. It's laced in all of these pieces that if you're willing to look at these deeper aspects, and maybe you wouldn't have identified it as humiliation as a root. Maybe you don't even think that you're doing things to create pain for yourself, but it's laced everywhere. Everywhere. Go ahead, you want to jump in?
Um, it's just, but it's I'm loving this. I love the fact that you mentioned the workplace because more often than not, also the humiliated will actually try to inflict that humiliation on other people so that they avoid being judged. You know, and you were talking about the shame part of it. You know, and because they will create this humiliation on other people. They will be the ones there to help. So if they're helping, they cannot be judged because people will feel grateful, you know, that they're being helped by the same person that actually is doing this, which can perhaps be construed as well, I'm going to say it, a narcissist kind of thing, you know, because if you're doing this in order for you to take control of what the other person thinks of you, then you're manipulating it, you know, and that avoids shame because how can someone shame you if they need to be grateful for what you're doing to them, you know, or for them, basically. So it's something that more often than not, and Lise actually says this in her book, that they try to inflict humiliation not only on themselves in order to control that no one is going to humiliate them. They are the ones humiliating themselves, controlling the pain, but also they humiliate other people because that's the behavior they know. As you said, the caregivers, that was the caregiver behavior, and they also will be carrying out that behavior with their children as well, creating like a vicious cycle, but also create that humiliation on other people. And this is something as simple as examples that she says in the book, as simple as children, they pee in the bed, they poop in the bed, they don't know that they're learning, right? So when children do the toddlers or the babies, when typically parents or caregivers will be like, "Oh, you're naughty girl," or "You naughty boy, that's bad. You little pig," or something like that. You know, like it's kind of fluffy, but at the same time, it's creating shame on the children. And I'm not here saying that you should or shouldn't do this. I'm not like an expert on this. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is what Lee says, and this typically it's a generalization, but typically creates these wounds that the child will feel ashamed. The child will feel like they're not worth um, that type, and they're not receiving love when they did something wrong. So they feel like they're kind of lost. And the way that they find to protect themselves from being in that space is to actually, okay, so whenever I do it, I will be the first one saying it. I will be the first one actually recognizing that so that I can control that pain. And for all of the five wounds, this is considered like to be the best one because typically the masochist is the one that is aware of the wound and is aware of the consequences of it because it actually controls it, you know. The other ones they can be more subconscious, but this one you're actually doing this to take control of it, you know. So you know what's happening, and you're doing it to control it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure. There is more of an awareness of it, and the distortion actually comes from how you take control of it versus not even recognizing that you have a wound and it's more subconscious. It's very much you have to be aware in order to work within these patterns. Um, and like something so simple as a child, wetting the bed, and even if a parent doesn't say anything to shame the child, what person enjoys changing the beds like out of, you weren't expecting it, like like even the energy in which you might do that, where you might be frustrated and like taking the sheets, like that alone in itself can be something that the child could internalize as feeling bad or shameful of. It's not like someone's like, "Oh, you great, you wet the bed, let's clean it up." Like, no, nobody's gonna respond like that, at least not, conscious, and like maybe consciously if they realize. But um, it's more like how these distortions come. Like, it's not like the parent could even potentially know how they could have responded better, because it's all however the child perceives something. Because the parent could even be conscious, thinking, okay, I'm going to respond consciously, and I'm going to, be the best that I could be as a parent. And you as a parent cannot control how the child will perceive something. And I think like it really comes down to, this is part of the human experience. There is no perfect parent. There is no perfect childhood. There is no perfect upbringing. This is part of being human. Everyone has these experiences where you don't feel 100% comfortable with the situation, and some sort of perception comes through, some sort of belief system gets like birthed, some sort of behavior gets birthed, and it's part of the experience, which means part of the human evolution, part of the human experience is to heal, which requires self reflection, requires identifying these things, and requires peeling them back so that you can actually come back to the true self. I think a lot of times people explore, let's say, wounds or traumas. A lot of people will throw the word trauma around, like, oh, like my traumas, my traumas. Okay. And as you start to identify these things and become aware of them, you're actually not healing. You're just becoming more aware of the negative ego. And becoming more aware of the negative ego isn't the end of the journey, because all you know is your negative ego. You don't actually know your true self. Healing is peeling away the negative ego to come back to the true self, to embody the true self, which, embodying that peace, that love, that purpose, that alignment to who you truly are, and to know thyself, and to embody that in everything that you're doing. But people don't know who they are. They don't even know their negative ego, most people. And people who are on the beginning the journey are beginning the journey of getting to know the negative ego, the patterns, the behaviors, the wounds, the traumas, and becoming more aware of that. But there's a ceiling to that. You just hit the ceiling. Oh, great, you know your wounds and traumas. Well done. But you need to heal. You need to go deeper and expand. Okay, so when you pull that away, then who are you? When you pull away these distortions, when you pull away these wounds and these traumas, who are you? And have you even gotten to know that aspect of yourself yet? Are you willing to get to know that aspect of yourself and live from that aspect, and stop living from your traumas and behaviors and patterns that have been birthed from, parents just trying to do their best? And I know there's shitty parents out there too that have neglected and abused, and the extreme. I get it. So I don't want to just be like, oh, your parents were trying. It's like some parents actually suck. And that's just like, that's a reality. And if you grew up in that scenario, like, I have compassion for you too. And you can still heal and go to these deeper aspects that I'm talking about. But there has to be a willingness and a bravery to that. Um, and it's always worth it, I think. It really is.
I love the fact that you said that no one is perfect, right? And this is something that we mentioned as well when we were talking about the 5 languages of love, is that caregivers are learning at the same time they're actually being there for their children. Like, it's a learning curve for them as well. So ultimately, they will mess up with the best intention ever, but they will mess up. The thing is that in order to control what the child is feeling, or to restrain or constrict whatever the child is experiencing, is the other way around. Let them feel and guide them through that. Help them regulate those emotions. But let them experience those emotions. Otherwise, children will grow up to have these wounds because they don't know how to react, and the ego is stronger. The ego will be there. It's stronger because it's a self. Um, it's trying to preserve the soul. Let's put it that way. It's trying to not feel pain. No one wants to feel pain, not physically or emotionally. Like, so you have to put a stop to it, and because you don't know how to do it in a regulated way, then the ego comes and says, well, this time around, no one is going to actually make you feel humiliated. You are going to humiliate yourself, and you are going to put yourself in situations that you will become humiliated because you want that and you control the narrative that way. Um, and I love the fact that when you actually peel this off and you become aware, that's not the end of it. That's the beginning of it. That's the first step. It's becoming aware. And this question is around the masochism, yeah, which is you become aware of the mask you wear, you know. And once you do that, then I don't know. The healing paths are very different, and anyone or each person will have their own, right? But typically, it will be when you start that and you become aware of what you don't want to be, then you're like in this void, and you don't know who you are. You are revolted. You become angry, and you need to give yourself the right to feel all of that. Like you have all the right to be ashamed of what you suffered, to be even humiliated because you have been humiliated, but you know that it's temporary, and you know that that's not you anymore. You might not know who you are, but that's the process. And by the end of it, you become yourself again. And you were saying that this weekend is going to be the first Know Thyself in Toronto, right? And this is actually amazing because I've for people who are listening, I've done the Know Thyself Empower Thyself workshop with Laura program, and it's the beginning. You know, it's not you're not coming out of it with, oh, I know it all. No, you have all of these tools that you actually start to understand that you are not the person you were brought up to be, because it's all constrained. You have all of these wounds that you're not aware of, and your parents did their job of bringing you up and making you alive, and keeping you alive till this point. But everything that happens here, it's now your responsibility. You have to own it and to peel off all of these masks that you started to wear because you needed to survive and not feel pain. It's actually a beautiful place to be. It's amazing what you discover, and it's exciting to actually know that, oh, maybe I was thinking that particular thing every single day and I was repressing it. Maybe that's exactly what I want. You know, if I think about it like every single day and I don't do anything about it because of this constraint or of shame or of any wound or mask that I have, maybe I should look at it, you know, and start to have this healing. Most of it is compassion, you know, about yourself and how to deal with that. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, and these masks, like if I were to put on a dinosaur mask and walk down the street, I know I'm wearing a dinosaur mask. And I take off the dinosaur mask and I know that I'm back. But these masks, invisible, and what I think is tricky is that we begin to identify to the mask. And so to take off the mask is actually quite scary for some people. So for example, with this one, one thing I could see happening with, this particular mask and wound is self-deprecating humor. Like think about all the comedians that make thousands, millions of dollars with self-deprecating jokes. Like they put themselves down to get that laugh, to take control of the crowd and create humor out of something. And that's a great thing. Like it's great to laugh and it's great to have humor and these sorts of things. But when you start to identify to that mask and start to identify as the funny one or the comedian, and this is just one version, right? There's many versions that this, I'm using this as an example, but that identity to heal means you have to take off that mask, and then that requires you to question your identity. And to question your identity would be like, well, if I'm not this, then who am I? And if you don't know, that unknown can feel scary. That unknown can feel um, like, why would I? Why would I do that? I know this mask. I know this identity. I'm comfortable in it. Maybe it's a distortion. Maybe, it's not the best way to go into life, but like, this is where I'm comfortable. This is what I know. And to take it off would put me in a place I don't know. And if you have a high need for control, which is part of this wound in this mask, where you want to control the situation, that's going to be very challenging. But I still encourage you to explore this and to get curious rather than to feel fear. Be curious with what's under that mask. Be curious about, if I'm not this, then what am I? Versus like, well, if I'm not this, what am I? Well, I don't know who I am. It's like, I don't know who I am. Who am I? What else is there? And to come back to that place of childlike wonder and childlike awe about the world, and childlike curiosity to learn more about these deeper aspects of yourself. Because when you stick to what's comfortable and you identify the mask and you hold on and you have that attachment and you'll hold on to as much as you possibly can to make yourself right, then you actually block yourself to what's possible, to be able to expand and evolve and become even more of who you are. That these deeper aspects of who you are have been boxed and shoveled down, and you don't even realize it. And then what happens is you go through life with that mask and you keep checking off boxes, and you still feel unfulfilled, and you still feel like you're not getting anywhere, and you're wondering why. Like, I've done all the right things and I still don't feel fulfilled. It's because you haven't actually tapped into the part of you that needs to awaken so that fulfillment can come. Like, who are you? Are you that mask of being the nurse or the doctor or the parent? Are you that mask of, being the funny one, or being the clown, or being the self-sabotage? Like, whatever it is, it's not who you are. It's like everybody's walking around with a dinosaur mask on and they think it's just normal. And it's silly when you think about it that way. Like, why would you do that? Like, isn't it hot under there? Don't you want to see the world, and don't you want to expand and like really tap into the hollowness that people feel in life, the emptiness, the sadness, the hopelessness, the the void that people try to fill with alcohol and drugs and shopping and smoking and TV and sex. It's like it's constantly trying to fill this void, but it feels like a bottomless pit. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't fill. It's because you're not the fulfillment comes from the inside, and that's from actually getting to know who you truly are, on all mental, emotional, spiritual. These are the 5 wounds of the soul. Like, do you even have a relationship with your soul, or are you just trying to protect yourself all the time from pain? The soul brings joy, the soul brings love, the soul brings like peace and these aspects of life that we all hope and want and desire, but we're not actually willing to take the steps that we need to get there, because we're willing to work hard and make money so that we can buy things and hopefully that fulfills it. But the truth is, you have to let go of who you think you are and fulfill who you, like, this true self embodiment. And that's where fulfillment, that's where joy comes from. And talking about these wounds, I think it can be interesting and like, oh yeah, maybe you quickly kibosh it or quickly deflect it, but go in and start to uncover yourself, start to dust yourself off, and watch how much love is inside there. It's limitless. It really is. Yeah, I feel like I went on a bit of a rant. Sorry, Joao.
Don't apologize. That was I'm not sure if that was even like you saying that, it's like getting all of that information. I got goosebumps. That's it. That's it. I think we can leave it at that. Just as you said, go in. Like tear that door that is blocking you from knowing who you are and go in. Step it into that house. It's your house, right? It's your home. You just need to make it as your home. Get to know it. Like go to all of the compartments, to all of the divisions, the little attic that it's there that you don't want to go. It's a lot of work, yes. It's scary, yes. It's uncomfortable, yes. But as soon as you get to know it, then it will be your home. So, and it's like you said to me once that you live with you 24/7. So it does make sense that you get to know you. And that's it.
I love that. Yeah, get to know you. Well, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Joao, for bringing your heart and wisdom and being part of this space that people can listen in on. And yeah, take your pieces and let us know how it lands, and um, let us know about your journey, because it's a journey. It's not a one time chat on a virtual life. It's a journey.
It's not, it's a lifetime journey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love you. Thank you
I
so
love
much
you.
for this.
I love you too. Have a beautiful, blessed day, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Bye.